So I'm getting this sunglass right. I'm gonna get this. Okay, you know what? Screw it. Real life filter at this point. So, okay, think about it this way. We go ahead and have ourselves with our mornings, and sometimes we go ahead and spend not sure what to do. Well, even when we show ourselves what to do, it's that we don't make ourselves sure as to what we really should do when we have our phones so much next to ourselves these days. So it's more so, well, go ahead and take in the neighborhood that you live in. Smell the roses if you can. But if there's no rose, at least you got a tree, right? If there is at least that one tree, how about you start walking around to see more trees, right? I mean, as it is, there's a tree right there. Look at that. And then there's more trees in that direction. What I ended up doing is just walk around the neighborhood because I was just a bored guy. Maybe like that guy was too. Who knows? We walk around because we just want to look for direction in our lives in this postmodern day society in which we have forgotten how to go ahead and be friendly towards each other on the outside sometimes. Sometimes places like buses, ever so mobile, but encapsulating anyone or everyone that would come to a micro community for an average 15 minutes would probably be the last refuge at this point. It's the case for many in Puerto Rico right now as it is. Less so for many of us here in the United States when it's an overabundance of cars. The middle ground I had lived through is in Staten Island right now. But right now, I live in Queens. I would say the second middle ground would be Yonkers, where I grew up. What does that make Brooklyn, Manhattan, and the Bronx at that point then, you know? The way I see Brooklyn is that it's the true progressive. Yes, I just called Brooklyn the true progressive borough because that's what it is. It's come to be that. But I think it kind of always was compared to Manhattan itself. Manhattan happened to be about the culmination of people throughout the world getting down to business. Versus Brooklyn, it's people with lives. And you get to see it. The most tip-top shapes of the livelihoods that ever could be mustered in the calmest side of New York City itself. Greenpoint most especially. Some of us would have actually forgotten how to make sure we're part of an entire world though. And you know, I actually would include Greenpoint in this conversation too, because guess what? There is a guy that I ended up asking for directions as I was holding my two phones with one of them 3% battery, the other dead. You want to ask again with the guys inside? This car shop's bouncer ended up telling me as he was on his phone. You know what? Even if he was trying to prepare to message his own kids or something, his family, that he is doing his best to stay in touch and saying that he loves his family. It can even be the case with his friends, sure. Come on, it's a message, okay? It's an instantaneous electronic written note most times, even if these days they can be supported with a supplemental link or two. A link to extra reading content or consumption content. Consumption content being, let's say, a YouTube video, for example, okay? A Facebook post, a Twitter or X post, tweets, as we used to call them. This guy didn't even want to take his time. This is the world we live in right now. In Brooklyn, of all goddamn places. Just going ahead and scathingly shoving off a guy from Queens with words, which I don't find it as bad as... Look, I don't find shoving with words as bad as shoving with a hand, but you know what? It's still disrespectful to disregard what today's world is supposed to actually entail with the social expectations. Now with common social technology in our own pockets. And you know what? That subway train that just passed by even has digital banners. Even more than likely would have digital advertisement banners too, because the MTA has realized how deep we are with cell phone culture. Yeah. Look, for anyone who can use social information technology to their advantage, to the point they can understand how to share with others, these are the people I give the greater advantage to a thanks for. A greater bit of credit. Easiest way you can do it now is by tapping an iPhone to another. But sometimes you would have to go into the AirDrop settings to say, to AirDrop that you would like your content shared with everyone for 10 minutes. So does the other person. For Android users, the tap the phones feature has actually existed for a very long while. It's just that it came out at a time that the tap to pay systems were not really commonly accepted. Now they are. It's about knowing where society is with technology now, as to what gives you the advantage now. And I find it sometimes damning, but then again, if you want to go on the religious faith side, some of us were already born into damnation. Going to the scientific and statistical side, a lot of us would actually see the proof. Soy Latino Americano. A middle ground between the white and the black. In which white supremacy is growing very pronounced once more again. Look, the guy who ended up shoving me away with his words was white. But I didn't find a reason to disrespect him in the moment, because you know what? I just decided he wanted to relax otherwise, even if it was disrespectful. Maybe he might not have kids, I don't know. I did call him a derogatory phrase once someone else gave me directions, and I was already far enough away that I know he wouldn't have been able to harm me. A woman with tattoos ended up giving me directions. a woman who runs a cafe. I ended up turning his way afterwards. Said verbatim, "Hey, she gave me directions, dick face." But I wasn't chased. Why would this guy chase me? He's at work. This country is a society that has tried to understand how to build itself on work versus play and to find balance in between. Because I believe this is the one Western country that understands that world peace is achieved when you have the perfect balance and still be progressive at the large scale for it. It's just more so you only can have a few hubs of being progressive that would be able to inspire the rest of one nation. However, now there's a double connotation of nation. When I've read Puerto Rico by Nancy Morris, talking about the nation as a landmass of peoples that like to share an ideology with each other versus a state being governed. A country at that point being a nation state. When you consider that today's internet had been founded on a www dot before anything like google.com, in which www ends up being World Wide Web. We are supposed to have been interconnected throughout the rest of the world, and you know what? If you go ahead and think about how you could have reached to someone else in, let's say, Thailand, for example, using Facebook, maybe even a family member that... If it had been a family member, then okay, you know what? Kudos to you. You two managed to keep in touch. You're two parties, but you know what? Nation, again, originally had been a landmass, but whereas nation can still count as a landmass when it comes down to the World Wide Web of peoples. Considering that the World Wide Web was founded by the United States to begin with at that point, we're becoming closer to a United States of the world at this point. We really are. You're hearing this from an autistic guy of all people. Someone who has started to figure out that maybe autism is actually a byproduct of people having instinctually realized how much we've plateaued with the last century having been based on trying to have rapid industrialization, and instead have had ourselves realize that today's progressivism is about social technology. Think about Raymond, for example, from the Rain Man. His routine is based on making sure that he watches all of the television shows that he knows would help him remember how the current state of the world is like. He's able to recite almost every single fact that is asked of him, as well as see a bundle of toothpicks on the floor, count them in less than a half a second. I'm not with that ability. I'm just able to understand the difference between the social world through technology and the social world in real life. I just forgot for a little while about the real life world because I had a crush on another autistic French girl, believe it or not. 9 years just because I'm also a Spyro fan. She is. She drew the best Spyro fan art. But she didn't even know for herself until she started suspecting. 3 minutes. 3 minutes every single time, and then I got interrupted. Look, this is probably what's damned us. Ourselves not being confident enough to go ahead and tell the older generations, our own parents mostly, how vastly interconnected we are throughout the rest of the world. And when it's too late, we've already would have had tattoos. And you know what? A third of the people in this country as adults actually would have already done so. I've seen that statistic. But I'm also recording all of this as a set of stories on Snapchat right now. Believe me, I'm going to record all of these stories, make an upload of this onto YouTube eventually. Do not deny the friendship that you could have made ever in any kind of avenue. Lest we forget not only this broken soul, but these broken souls as it's come to be at this point. It's our world of our broken souls now. We just have to remember how we spend time in our world. Right now, I'm personifying as Nikti only because Zuckerberg himself has actually perpetuated our desire for anonymity. That's why we have the username culture now too. He's only been a child when he ended up having his platform though. Okay, you know what? It's not exactly much his fault as much as we can blame Hitler for the Holocaust. Zuckerberg is one I take as an anti-Nazi. But that might be better than a straight-up Nazi. I'm otherwise 123 Park Avenue, and I'm signing out. Be safe out there.
Of course, Pyongyang has its own wish list of what it wants. Now, the good news here is there may be limits to just how much Moscow is willing to offer.
I'd rather this, okay?
Of course, Pyongyang